That was Beautiful Trauma by Pink here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and this is GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Wednesday from 1 to 3 p.m., except last Wednesday. I'm sorry about that, everyone. I didn't know the campus was closed then until quite a while after the show. Really, it was like the day of. I was like, so am I coming in or not? What's going on? Anyway, so that means we have a whole lot of video game news and information to lay down, and on top of that, I'm juggling quite a few things right now. So we will be a little bit slow on the start here, but I just wanted to assure you, GameBabble Live is very much live today. And yeah, we will open after I get all of this stuff sorted out that's going on right now. We will talk about the new games for this week, what's coming out next week. Then we will hit you with random video game news, moving into the discussion of the loot box debacle that's going on, which, whew, have there been interesting developments in that mess. And then, finally, we will talk VR, because Skyrim VR is here, and it's proving to be quite the game changer. Doom VFR is this Friday, which, interesting piece of news no one is reporting on. Doom VFR has smooth movement with the DualShock 4 and with the PlayStation Aim controller, the gun-shaped one that comes with Farpoint. Yeah, that one gives you smooth movement in Doom. You go to the options, you turn on left stick movement. This is kind of huge news because all of the criticisms surrounding Doom VFR have been about the fact that it's been based entirely on teleport movement. And even the preview videos that IGN just put out today are showing the teleport movement. But if you look up, a few people got their hands on copies early. You know, they wound up with Walmarts that were selling them early. And they've streamed the game and shown there is smooth movement. Maybe not smooth turning, but there is smooth movement. And also, yes, Skyrim VR has smooth movement as an option as well. In both cases, it's optional. It's something you have to turn on. But that's kind of a big thing, because teleport movement has been one of the things that's really been holding VR back in many people's eyes. So these two very large games having actual smooth movement, kind of a big deal. And I'm sorry, I get a little attached to this because it's something I feel not enough people are actually reporting on. So we will kick all that stuff off later on in the show, and also we will talk about what anime are in theaters. Pro tip, Howl's Moving Castle is in theaters today at 7 p.m. It's the dubbed version, but if you want to see Howl's Moving Castle, that's 7 p.m. today. We got some stuff coming up in December and January, so we will talk about that later. But unfortunately, I got a lot of things going on right now. So I hope you will enjoy Everybody Mad by OT Genesis here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. And we will be back shortly-ish with actual video game news and information here with GameBabble Live. Please stay tuned, and thank you so much for listening. That was Drop Me in the Water by Our Lady Peace here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Wednesday from 1 to 3 p.m., except for last Wednesday. Sorry about that. But anyway, we like to kick the show off, even when it is kicked off a little bit late, with what games came out this week, what's coming out next week, and what anime are hitting theaters. So let's get started. This week, what was released on PlayStation 4? Not nearly as much as normal, but there's a pretty decent chunk next week, though. So this week, we got, on PlayStation 4, we got 911 Operator, Black Mirror, Blue Angels Aerobatics Flight Simulator. Stumbled on that word. It's Quiz Time, Ken Follett's The Pillars of the Earth, Knights of Valor, which I've been playing the Hong Kong version of that. I'm glad it's in America. That's actually a free-to-play MMO version of a long-running Taiwanese beat-em-up series that's actually pretty darn good. So that's actually pretty neat. Moving on, Outcast Second Contract, Radial G Racing Revolved, I guess, got a physical release. Now, personally, I would recommend against getting that on PlayStation VR. You can play it in VR or not in VR, but it's not a very good game. I was deeply disappointed. Also, Senko no Ronde 2 has gotten 2 DLC characters. You can get the Temjin from Virtualon and the Assault Suit Vulcan from Cybernator as DLC, which that makes me happy because I friggin' love Cybernator. That was an old Super Nintendo game that was phenomenal. Moving on, Skyforce Reloaded, which is a port of a top-down shooter for cell phones, now on not cell phones. Also, apparently, Star Ocean 4 The Last Hope 4K and Full HD Remaster came out without me noticing. So, yeah, Star Ocean 4, now prettier than ever, which is nice because Star Ocean 4 is actually kind of my favorite of the series. Admittedly, I'm not a big Star Ocean fan, and it had plenty of problems, but I actually kind of like 4. I know 2 is generally considered the best, though, because 2 has a bunch of awesome features. The battle system never clicked with me in 2, even though I really wanted to like it because of all the features. I'm getting off track, though. VR Carts also apparently got a physical release, and that game is, kind of scamtacular. Also, though, this Friday, Doom VFR hits PlayStation 4, the PlayStation VR, which is a completely retooled version of Doom. It is technically a new Doom game built off the assets of last year's Doom game, designed for VR, designed for teleport movement, and then at the last minute, they made it so you can do smooth movement as well. It was a very last-minute addition. Moving on, though, what's the Xbox One getting this week? This week, Xbox One got Black Mirror, Ken Follett's The Pillars of the Earth, Outcast Second Contact, Bush Hockey League, it's apparently today. And on Friday, they get Blue Angels Aerobatic Flight Simulator, Hand of Fate 2, Skyforce Reloaded, and Soma. Moving on, Nintendo Switch. Nintendo Switch got Resident Evil Revelightans, Resident Evil Revelightans 2, and Resident Evil Revelightans Collection. I'm not letting that typo go. Also, apparently tomorrow it will be getting World Heroes as part of the Arcade Archives Neo Geo, along with a game called Traverse USA for Arcade Archives. Mujo, Opus, The Day We Found Earth, Serial Cleaner, Star Ghost, and Siberia 2, and you want to talk about sneaking up on me, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is this Friday. What? I knew it was early December. I thought it was next week after that. I thought it was going to be a minute. No. Friday. So I'm excited about that. I'm very excited about, after some of the recent character reveals, I'm very excited. Also, nothing for 3DS. 3DS is definitely winding down. And on Vita, nothing on Vita. Also, pretty winding down there, at least for the US, at least that's what it looks like. So, what's coming out next week for PlayStation 4? Well, the PlayStation 4 is getting a Hat in Time, which I'm hearing is a very nice platformer. Bravo Team, which is a co-op first-person shooter in VR where you and another player are supposed to use a lot of teamwork and stuff. Dead Rising 4, Frank's Big Package, which is, of course, an add-on for Dead Rising 4. Destiny 2, Curse of Osiris, obviously an add-on for Destiny 2. Horizon Zero Dawn Complete Edition. Oh My God Heads, I have no clue. Raiden 5 Director's Cut. Space Hulk Deathwing. Steep Road to the Olympics and Steep Winter Games Edition. The Surge, A Walk in the Park, which DLC for The Surge, and The Walking Dead, the Telltale Series Collection. And then next, is that Friday? That is next Friday, Tokyo Xanadu EX Plus comes out. I'm glad we've got more games using EX Plus. But no alpha, it's just EX Plus, not EX Plus Alpha. Moving on. On the Xbox One, we are getting Boiling Bolt, Oh My God Heads, Space Hulk Deathwing, Steep Road to the Olympics, Steep Winter Games Edition, The Surge, A Walk in the Park, The Walking Dead Telltale Series Collection, and then on the 6th, A Hat in Time, Minecraft Xbox One X. I guess that's the system. I guess they're making a Minecraft version of the system. And Rememoried. And then on Friday, Battlestar Galactica Deadlock, Hello Neighbor, and Paladin, whatever that is. Moving right along, Nintendo Switch next week is getting Caveman Warriors and 9 Parchments. And then that Thursday, it is getting Dimension Drive, Embers of Mirim, Human Fall Flat, Phantom Breaker Battlegrounds Overdrive, but without the branching paths. And they'll patch in online later, they say. Slain Back from Hell, Teslagrad, and Vostok Inc. 3DS is getting nothing, and PlayStation Vita is getting nothing. So that concludes our games this week and next week list. Now, anime in theaters. What have we got? Well, today, Howl's Moving Castle is in theaters at 7 p.m. It is the dub. So that is a thing on December 4th. So next week, I believe... that's Monday. Next Monday, 7 p.m. Fate Stay Night Heaven's Feel will be in theaters. I think that's just Ronnie's and Marcus O'Fallon. But that is a thing that is happening. And then... January 18th, I know we're skipping ahead a ways, is Mary and the Witch's Flower at 7 p.m. Once again, 7 p.m. is apparently just anime hour. 7 p.m. all the time. But Mary and the Witch's Flower is the first movie from Studio Ponac, which is founded by a bunch of people who left Studio Ghibli, and they're kind of trying to make their own Ghibli, and things are looking really promising for Mary and the Witch's Flower. So, those are the anime that are coming to theater. Again, Howl's Moving Castle, tonight, 7 p.m. Fate Stay Night Monday, 7 p.m. So, keep your eyes on those. Anyway, that concludes games this week and next week and what's coming up in animes in theaters. I will kick you back to the music, and then when we get back, which might be after a short break, we will start by just discussing random video game news, like the upcoming Super Mario cereal, which you might be interested in because it's an amiibo too. Yes. Oh, video games. And then, after that, we will get to the loot box debacle that is going down. And then after the loot box debacle, we get to talk about VR. I'm sorry. VR is such a weird topic because people got so sick of it because no one would shut up about it before, like, any of the VR units came out. And then the units come out, and it's like, oh, yeah, VR's here, yeah, bye. And now, like, no one reports on it. Like, IGN took down their PlayStation VR section, even though new PlayStation VR games come out every week. So, it's a dumb thing. It is made of stupid. But we do what we can. Anyway, I hope you will be excited to hear the latest developments there, because things have certainly heated up in the VR sector. But we've got a whole lot of other video game news and information coming up, so please stay tuned to 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. Coming up next is Into the Fire by Asking Alexandria, here on 89.5 FM. Thank you so much. That was Heathens by 21 Pilots here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live, your video game news and information show, which airs every Wednesday from 1 to 3 p.m. Thank you so much for joining me. So, we discussed what games are coming out this week and next week. This Friday, Doom VFR and Xenoblade Chronicles 2. So, I'm very excited for Friday. And, yeah, it is also worth mentioning, and I'm going to keep bringing this up because it is kind of the biggest news to me in a weird way. Doom VFR has smooth movement with the DualShock 4 and with the PlayStation Aim controller. I don't know about with the moves, it might not, but that is what's going on there. We will discuss the loot box fiasco after another short break. But let's see. First of all, more PS4s sold this Black Friday than ever before in PlayStation history. It was a very successful Black Friday, but that's because a lot of companies, including Sony, were doing, like, specific company-wide Black Friday deals. Like, you might have seen the thing with Overwatch, where they were like, oh, Overwatch is half-priced for Black Friday. That was Blizzard specifically telling everyone, hey, sell the game for half price, and that's what Sony was doing. Let's see. So that wound up really working out. Next up, Super Mario Cereal is coming soon, and it is going to have an amiibo chip in it. So your cereal box will be an amiibo that works with Super Mario Odyssey and gets you power-ups. Unfortunately, the Super Mario Cereal is different from the old Super Mario Cereal. It is more Lucky Charms-like rather than Tricks-like. The original Nintendo cereal system was a very Tricks-like cereal. I remember it rather vividly and have been wanting it to return. So I'm very, very disappointed that the Super Mario cereal is not the old Nintendo cereal. But I've got a brilliant idea. They should take the old Nintendo cereal, re-release it as the Nintendo Cereal System Classic, and only put 5 boxes in every store and watch the bloodbath. Seriously, though, I'd love a Nintendo Cereal System Classic. I am making the strangest demand right now, but I like it. But yes, there will be a Super Mario cereal where the box is an amiibo. This is actually going to be very interesting to see play out, because, I mean, it'll easily be one of the cheaper amiibos, technically, and right now, this is what's going to be interesting. Right now, there are no plans to release the Super Mario cereal in Europe. And I think that's going to cause a lot of European fans to go, whoa, wait, but I want that cereal box amiibo. So I could easily see people trying to buy the cereal boxes off of eBay, and there being a lot of fighting for these cereal boxes. Possibly. I don't know. You know, you'd think they'd make a lot of them. They probably will. We'll find out. We'll find out when we get our amiibo cereal boxes. Because I'm interested in that. Moving right along. It is worth mentioning Demon's Souls, which is still a difficult name to pronounce because it is Demon's apostrophe S Souls plural. Demon's Souls. The first of the Souls games. The servers will shut down February 28th. Yes, believe it or not, the servers are still up, so if you have a PlayStation 3 and a copy of Demon's Souls, hop back on there. Get some friends together and desperately try to get through the convoluted team-up mechanics and enjoy the online while you can. Thankfully, the game will still be perfectly playable after the servers are down, but it'll certainly be missing a little something. Demon's Souls was, as I mentioned, the first of the Souls game, perhaps the shakiest of them. It has its pros and its cons. Because I think a lot of the stranger mechanics were very rough back then, but at the same time, there's this certain charm to it that I know a lot of people like. Some people do prefer Demon's Souls and consider it the best of the Souls games, and it is the only one that actually ties in with the Kingsfield series. Because, yes, it's actually a sequel spin-off of Kingsfield. Who knew? And so, yeah, servers shut down February 28th, so enjoy them while you can. Speaking of servers shutting down, Marvel Heroes Omega is shutting down December 31st. They had a whole lot of things planned. They had Thor Ragnarok costumes, they had a bunch of new characters, they were going to have classic X-Men costumes, but they are shutting it down. And believe it or not, no, it's not because of the X-Men. Although it would be quite plausible that you'd think that, because earlier, Disney demanded that Marvel Heroes Omega remove all of the Fantastic Four characters from the game, which was really awkward, because this is a game, it's a free-to-play sort of Diablo-style game with Marvel characters, and you, like, buy each character individually. So there were people who went out and bought the Fantastic Four, and then Disney comes in and says, nope, take it away, give them refunds. So that kind of pissed people off, but now they're just shutting the whole thing down. But it's not because of the X-Men. Believe it or not, it's because of sexual harassment allegations. That's right, the head of the company that makes Marvel Heroes, Gazillion, the CEO, has been accused of sexual harassment, and he has 2 prior convictions. So that's not a good look, and Disney is just shutting the whole thing down. Because they don't want to make their company look bad, even though there is no way this guy isn't getting fired. In fact, I still can't believe they're actually going this far. You had a successful MMO that's making money, but oh whoops, this guy screwed up, and instead of just firing him and moving right along, we're shutting everything down. So, that is certainly an interesting thing to have happen there. Moving on, Final Fantasy XII on PS4 has added the Sky Pirates Den back in, and also there's a fantastic Viera theme out that you can download for your PlayStation 4, based on the Viera Village, and it plays the Viera Village music, which is actually some of the best, like, PlayStation background theme music I've ever heard. Because most of the PlayStation background themes that you can get for your PlayStation 4, they usually have music that gets really, really annoying really fast. Nah, that music, spot on. Highly recommended. But yeah, Final Fantasy XII is adding back in the Sky Pirates Den. If you're unfamiliar with that, it was a feature in the original Final Fantasy XII that was basically an achievement system. When you completed achievements, you unlocked little, 16-bit sprites of assorted characters, and you tried to fill it out. And they figured, well, we don't need this anymore because we have an achievement system actually in the game. So we don't need the Sky Pirates Den. But then people were like, it's the one thing this game is missing. And so they're like, oh, okay, we'll just patch it back in. For some reason, Square made a big deal about this. Speaking of Square making big deals, how about that Final Fantasy 15? We will talk certainly about the Monster of the Deep virtual reality Final Fantasy fishing game later in the program, because I did pick that up. But Square has confirmed they're going to do 3 more character episodes after episode Ignis. Next up will be episode Arden, where you get to play as one of the villains. And also, the next big update for Final Fantasy 15 is adding character switching, aka that feature you should have had in the game from the beginning, you idiots. Yes. After the next update in Final Fantasy 15, you'll be able to switch between Noctis, Prompto, Ignis, and Gladiolus all you want. And yeah, it should have been a feature from the start. This was one of the major complaints with Final Fantasy 15 was the fact that you played as Noctis, and you only played as Noctis. And now, a year later, they're like, oh, well, now you can play as everyone else. Thanks. Cripes. Final Fantasy 15 is one of the weirdest game releases because it released in such a finished yet unfinished state, and they've been so desperately trying to patch it, and there are a lot of people who are like, can you just abandon this and move on to Final Fantasy 16? Focus on not screwing that up. But admittedly, that takes more work than fixing 15. But 15 is so weird because of that. Because they are trying so hard to get that all fixed up. Moving on, Pokemon Go has had a global catching event where if 3 billion Pokemon were caught worldwide by November 26th, Farfetch'd would show up. Mission successful, Farfetch'ds are on the loose, and Ho-Ohs are also everywhere until December 12th. Furthermore, Yooka-Laylee is finally coming to Nintendo Switch on December 14th. In case you don't remember, Yooka-Laylee was a kickstarted game from the original developers of Banjo-Kazooie who had left Rareware, and they were like, we want to make new Banjo-Kazooie style games. We're going to make Yooka-Laylee, get it, same basic idea. And it came out, but they were like, oh, we canceled the Wii U version, and we're having trouble with the Switch version. And it came out, people were relatively disappointed. Now, Nintendo and Unity themselves have stepped in to assist with the port and specially optimize it for the Switch, and it will come out December 14th. What's interesting is there are rumors floating around that Yooka-Laylee on the Switch runs at 60 FPS, whereas on PlayStation 4 Pro it runs at 30? I cannot confirm this at all, but that would be very interesting if it were true. I firmly believe the Switch could run Yooka-Laylee at 60 FPS if it was properly optimized, and certainly if Nintendo themselves are stepping in and saying, we are making this game work on our system, yeah, that might actually happen. Moving on, Fighting EX Layer, the mystery fighting game from Arika, which is coming out, and it's going to have a open beta sometime in the middle of December. They have drastically redesigned Hokuto/Shirase. Hokuto was one of the returning characters. She's in sort of the Japanese traditional kendo outfit, but they have some crazy storyline about how her true self is named Shirase, and it was sealed away, but now it's unleashed, and out of nowhere, they're like, oh, by the way, drastic character redesign. She uses bladed fans like Katana from Mortal Kombat. Okay. The character redesign's way cooler now. I'm glad to see that they could pull this off, but at the same time, it's like, so are you going to make regular Hokuto a unlockable character? Because you've pretty much just turned this into a completely new character. So that's a little weird. But we'll see. I kind of wish they would have spent that time getting more characters in the game, because we still haven't seen Pullumperna. Or Area, but I know I'm the only person who cares about Area. That and the competitive Street Fighter EX2 players, because Area's really good. And Kid Buu, Adult Gohan, and Gotenks have all been shown for Dragon Ball FighterZ. These are characters we all kind of expected to be in the game, but now they are confirmed. And Dragon Ball FighterZ is coming out very soon. Anyway, that should wrap things up, and it's time for me to kick you back to the music. So coming up next is That's My Girl by Fifth Harmony here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind, and when we get back, we'll talk loot boxes and what a debacle they've become. Here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Thank you so much for listening. Here's That's My Girl by Fifth Harmony. That was One Foot by Walk on the Moon, or Walk the Moon, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to GameBabble Live here on 89.5 FM, your video game news and information show, which airs every Wednesday from 1 to 3 p.m. Once again, I'm your host, Jell, and so before the break, we talked about the upcoming release of the Mario cereal, which will be an amiibo. I spoke of Marvel Heroes Omega shutting down December 31st, and Demon's Souls servers shutting down February 28th. And Yooka-Laylee finally coming to Switch. Oh, I forgot to mention, Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite will be adding Black Widow, Venom, and Winter Soldier on December 5th. So, more characters for that. But, it's time to talk loot boxes. So, for those of you just joining us, loot boxes are a form of microtransaction. Basically, you get a game, and then it's like, wow, I would like more equipment or outfits or stuff for my character. Rather than just buying those pieces of equipment with a loot box system, you spend real money to get a random box that has a bunch of random stuff in it. Now, these were commonplace in free-to-play games, especially ones on mobile phones. But unfortunately, this year, a bunch of, big-name, full-price boxed releases, the ones you buy from GameStop, in a box with a physical disc and cost you full price, have been exploiting these free-to-play mobile phone-style money-making schemes without being free-to-play. Perhaps the worst was NBA 2K18, which, that one you actually spent real money to get virtual currency to level up your basketball player in-game, and it cost a ridiculous sum of money to get anywhere, and that player is only going to be usable for that year. They won't be able to be ported to 2K19, I don't think. So it was a completely awful idea, waste of money. Everyone complained, and they did actually patch down the prices for that. But that's hardly the only one. Lord of the Rings, Mordor, Shadow of War, I believe it's called. That one is a single-player game, but they had loot boxes that will get you more orcs for your army. And that one caused a bit of a stir. But what really set everyone off was Star Wars Battlefront 2. You see, Star Wars Battlefront 1 was a bit of a problem of a game, because it released, blatantly unfinished. What it was, it's a multiplayer Star Wars shooter where you go into various, Star Wars battlegrounds, and you pick, assorted stormtroopers and rebel soldiers, and you shoot at one another, and you fly some X-Wings and TIE Fighters. It's great. But the problem was, Star Wars Battlefront 1, I shouldn't say the original, because there were two Battlefront games on PS2 that are arguably much better on PS2 and Xbox that people really loved, and now they've brought it back. EA has brought it back, and it's basically a reskinned Battlefield. But it was pretty nice, but Battlefront 1 launched, with barely any content, and then there was a season pass you had to buy, which cost the same price as a full game to get the rest of the content, and there was no single player, and people complained. And with Battlefront 2, it looked like EA was actually listening to us. Because they were like, okay, we're going to release it with tons of content on the disc, there will be a full single-player campaign, Star Wars Battlefront 2 is going to be a fully finished, fleshed-out game. And things were looking really promising until the beta, when people saw the loot box system with star cards. Basically, the loot box was the entire way you progressed your character. That was how you got new abilities for your character. That was how you got new weapons for your character. And, like, there's a, like, ability crafting system, but you're limited to what you can craft based on your star card level, and you raise your star card level by getting more cards. Basically, if you just went in there, spent a couple $100 on loot boxes, you would instantly be a better player than everyone else in the game. And this is where people complain about DLC. Pay to win is the number one complaint. Because people will, because it's completely unfair. There are always going to be those rich people out there with more money than sense, or kids that have their parents' credit card and don't understand the concept of money, that will just be like, oh, all I have to do is spend a couple $100 and now I'm the best player of the game, and they would do it. And it would piss off all of the people who are legitimately trying to be good and would ruin the game. So people complained profusely about this, and EA was like, okay, we'll scale it back. Well, then people got their early copies, and they realized it's not scaled back enough. You can still make huge progress by buying star cards. It was still an issue. And they were discovering that if you were trying to unlock characters without just buying loot boxes, it would take like 40 hours of straight gameplay just grinding for the ability to play Luke Skywalker or Darth Vader. And EA reps tried to show up on Reddit and were like, well, we want there to be a sense of accomplishment when you unlock these characters, and it became the most downvoted post in Reddit history by a huge margin. People were like, this is scammy, this is scummy. Because if people just spend money, they could just get Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker for like a couple bucks if they get lucky, or hundreds of dollars if they get unlucky. It's a bit of a gamble. And that's where the problem arises. Because these loot boxes have been plaguing so many games. And people were like, is it gambling? Should we be concerned here? And way too many people pushed the gambling angle. Speaking personally, I don't think it should be regulated like gambling, but I think it should absolutely be shamed into oblivion. But a lot of people pushed the gambling angle, and now, like, Belgium, Hawaii, and Australia are all, like, considering legislation against loot boxes. Because, like, maybe these are gambling. Maybe it is a Star Wars-based casino. A guy in Hawaii even said it's a trap. And it's like, yeah, it was a really bad look. So Disney was like, whoa, you guys, you're ruining the brand. You need to stop. So, before the public launch of the game, for everyone else, they completely removed microtransactions, and they said, we will add them in at a later date when we figure out how to. And in spite of this fact, though, because of the nature of the loot boxes, this whole debacle, sales are drastically down on Star Wars Battlefront 2. Yet, EA is saying to their investors, don't worry, you guys. The removal of loot boxes won't affect our earnings. Which is pretty much EA saying, oh yeah, no, we could have just made perfectly fine money releasing this game normally, but we wanted to fleece as much money off of the consumer as possible with loot boxes. That's them saying that loot boxes weren't necessary. Meanwhile, CNBC says gamers should pay more for Star Wars Battlefront 2. But the guy saying it is the investor analyst for EA who sits in on their conference calls and makes money when EA makes money. Well, gee, I wonder why he thinks we should be paying more for video games. That would be like asking me, hey, Joe, you want more money? Yes. It's the stupidest thing. But EA desperately tried to, like, play it off for a minute that, oh, well, it's not selling because the story mode has a female protagonist, and everyone's like, yeah, no one cares about your story mode. That's not the issue. Aside from the fact that apparently the story mode doesn't have an ending. You're going to have to buy the ending as DLC to get the last few missions. So good job there. And there was even a point recently where some people thought the game industry was trying to pull together a group of people to help self-regulate loot boxes, but then folks looked into it, and it wound up being a hoax. Not before it got a few sites to report on it as if it were true, but anyone who looked at it was like, yeah, no, this is suspicious. And yeah, no, it was a hoax. Because how are you going to make, like, a coalition for game policy? Meanwhile, EA is like, we're watching loot boxes, we're watching the metrics, and we're going to try to figure out the best way to implement this. And I really don't like the words they're saying, because they're like, we know some people have more time than money, and some people have more money than time. And so we're trying to strike a balance. No. Bad EA. Maybe your entire concept of a progression system is completely borked. Maybe that's your problem. Because, you know what, honestly, I do kind of question first-person shooters with a progression system. With the idea of you have to level up to do better. They should probably consider just building it around collecting new characters and, like, make it all balanced. Just make it more stuff, not better stuff. So that way, oh, hey, here's a new weapon, but it has different pros and cons. That's how you do it. But it's all a mess. Meanwhile, EA is giving more experience in Need for Speed Payback to try to make up for their scrubs, because Need for Speed Payback, by the way, also has a loot crate system. You make your cars go faster by putting cards in them. So EA is actually, like, messing with how they're monetizing all their games, all their microtransactions, all their loot boxes. They're like, we're going to keep these in here, but everyone is really, really, really mad at us. And yes, I am. Now, I know a lot of people are thinking, no, we need government regulation in order to get them to cut this out. No. We got rid of online passes just through sheer pointing out how awful they were. Government, we can do the same. We can do the same with loot boxes. It's absolutely possible, I think. And if anyone who doesn't remember online passes, what it was when you bought a game, like, in case you don't remember online passes, for a while they had it where when you bought a game, it came with a code, and you had to type in the code and download a pass in order to play online. The idea being, if someone bought a game used, they would have to spend a couple bucks to buy the online pass if they wanted to play online. People saw this as being needlessly convoluted and scammy, especially because a lot of these companies weren't even hosting their own servers. And they were like, oh, it's a way to recoup losses from used game sales, and it really wasn't. Used game sales were not hurting them that as badly as they like to say they were. And it was just a complete mess. Especially because it actually, bit me in the butt a couple times. Because there was a point where some of my friends, they got the new Farpoint game. And I didn't care about Farpoint, but apparently the co-op was super awesome. So I was like, well, okay, I'll go out and I'll rent a copy of Farpoint. Because, we've actually got rental stores here in Missouri. And I was like, I'll go rent a copy of Farpoint and play online. And then I remembered there was an online pass. And I was like, oh, well, guess I can't do that now, can I? Because I'm not going to spend money to rent a game, then spend money to buy an online pass just so I can play online in a rental that I only rented just to play online. Things like that kept happening. And everyone was like, online passes are a stupid scam and y'all should be ashamed of yourselves. Everyone looked at the numbers. They're like, yeah, it's not worth the bad PR. We are not making enough money. Same thing could apply to loot boxes, especially because, and this is the most amazing thing to me, the free-to-play online games are less scammy than the full-price games that have loot boxes in them, and not because they're full price. Like, when you actually look at games like Warframe, or Dungeon Fighter, or indeed Knights of Valor, which I mentioned earlier, or Paladins, the way they implement their microtransactions doesn't come off as anywhere near as much of a scam. Like, Paladins actually sorts its loot boxes by type while also letting you just buy the outfits that you want, buy the content that you want. And that's the question is, why aren't you doing this? Because these are games that are supported entirely by their microtransactions. They are free games, and it's the microtransactions that keep them afloat. And I thought about it, and I realized what it is. With the games that need microtransactions, if they can't sell them, if they piss off their customers, they don't make any money. Meanwhile, the full-priced games, they can piss off their customers. They already got money from the customers, so if they want to have ridiculously overpriced microtransactions in their game and the consumer doesn't want to buy them, it's fine. They already made a pile of cash off of that player. If they quit now, no skin off their back. It's like, really? Like, I really think that's what's going on here. And so you wind up with this awkward situation where the full-priced AAA games are scammier than a free-to-play game that you just download for free. And it's like, this is just wrong. And I hope every single one of these games that's pulling this crap is getting a shellacking. Because I am very, very angry at all of them. And I think that's kind of what's happening. This year has been a very good year for games. We got Nier Automata. We got Super Mario Odyssey. We got Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy. Sonic Mania. We got so many good games. We got Xenoblade Chronicles 2 coming out. That could be a contender. There's been Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And all these games, no microtransactions. Like, some of them have some DLC. You can get extra quests for Breath of the Wild and stuff. Breath of the Wild is a complete game, though. Those are bonus. Those are add-ons. Those are expansion packs. Nier Automata, it has like one piece of bonus content DLC. I don't even know I think Super Mario Odyssey might be getting DLC. I'm not sure. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is going to get like further expansion packs down the line, but in general, they're getting a little bit of DLC, no loot boxes, none of this microtransaction BS, and they're good games. They're great games. And you know what I say? When we do our Game of the Year awards, this is my call to all the game journalists that aren't listening to me at all. But if I could, I would say when we do our Game of the Year awards, top 10 best games of 2017, we should make a point of omitting any game that has loot boxes and microtransactions like that. Just leave them off the list. There's so many other better games that came out this year. Persona 5. So many other better games that came out this year that you don't need to bend the knee to microtransactions because, they're the best. No. Oh, the new Assassin's Creed. Yeah, that's great. Guess what? Microtransactions. Don't care. Oh, Shadow of War. Guess what? Microtransactions. Don't care. Star Wars Battlefront 2 microtransactions. Don't care. Leave them off the list. They don't count. They are not the kind of games we're talking about because now they've made themselves into cell phone games. And when we do our Games of the Year awards, do we ever really include cell phone games? No, not really. And there can be some discussion about bias there, but we don't generally include cell phone games in our Game of the Year list. And I'm going to say Star Wars Battlefront 2 is a cell phone game now. It just, happens to be on PlayStation 4 and cost full price. I see literally no problem with this. I like this plan. I think this is the best plan. But that's just me, because I am vehemently anti-loot box. I admit it is pretty much the entire reason why half the reason I'm not playing Overwatch. Because I took one look at how they were distributing outfits and stuff. I opened a few of the loot boxes the game gave me, and I was like, oh, this isn't going to go well. I'm never going to get the actual outfit I want. They're never going to give me Tracer stuff. I'm just going to keep getting all this garbage for all these other characters. And you know what? No, if you can't have the common courtesy to just distribute the items regularly, then screw you. But you know what? More than that. You know what I really hate about loot boxes? They're lazy. Anyone who's familiar with me knows that I like Dead or Alive 5. a game that technically flopped, but then repositioned itself to make money off of DLC. Many people have made jokes about how much DLC there is, but that's 5 years of support. Like, the DLC you bought with DOA 5 Vanilla carried over into DOA 5 Ultimate, which carried over into DOA 5 Last Round. You kept that DLC. That is 5 years of costumes. They have made thousands of costumes. In fact, with Last Round, when they had those ridiculous season passes, that's because they were doing new costumes every month. And guess what? If people didn't buy those costumes, they didn't make money off of them. So they had to keep stepping their game up and figuring out what the consumer wanted, to the point where they were even doing costume contests every Halloween where players could just draw the costumes they want, and if everyone agreed that's the awesome costume, then they would make that costume. And the game managed to support itself off of that by constantly releasing new outfits, which in turn allowed them to update the game, give it balance patches, add in new moves, new stages for free, and eventually they made some new characters, which those cost money, but they were not that expensive, and DOA 5 was like the most supported game of all time. They only just now cut support for the game, cut support for the DLC. Like, they might still patch the balance. They're still holding tournaments. Right now, I think Koei Tecmo is just too bogged down with other releases to continue supporting DOA 5. But they supported that game entirely off of DLC, and I kind of liked it, because I didn't need all the DLC. I just bought what I wanted for my favorite characters when they released something I liked. That was all I did. And it worked out pretty well for that game. But with loot boxes, you don't have to do that. Overwatch can just be like, hey, here's 5 new costumes. You have 1 month to get them. Good luck. And then everyone rushes out and buys loot boxes by the bucket load in a desperate attempt to get those limited time costumes. They don't have to actually, keep the players interested in the same way. They don't really need those costumes to sell, because people will make them money just trying to get those costumes. And the sheer magnitude of, you would spend so much more money trying to get those costumes out of loot boxes for Overwatch than you would just buying them regularly for DOA 5, because they cost about the same as 2 loot boxes in DOA 5. 3 if they're one of the destructible or transformable costumes. So that's what I'm talking about. You see what I mean? And holy cow, that game got so much... DOA 5 got so much crap for how much DLC it had. But now I'm looking at the way loot boxes are being handled, and I'm like, this is so many hundreds of times worse than what DOA 5 did? Because DOA 5 was pretty much the right way to handle DLC. And Star Wars Battlefront 2 is the wrong way. It's not even DLC. It's stuff that's in the game, on the disc, and they're just making you pay more money to get at it. And that's the thing. I supported DLC because I look at it as a combination of buying a candy bar and paying overtime. If the developers want to take the extra time to add actual new content to a game, and you price it about, say, a candy bar, bag of chips, something like that, yeah, I'll pay that for a costume. You put in the work, I'll put in the money. But when it's like, oh, well, this is all in the game, you just have to throw money at us to get it, screw you, no. Nope. So that's where we're at with the loot box controversy. Now it's time to kick you all back to the music with, let's see, how about, Our New World by Dream Theater featuring Lizzie Hale, here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. And when we get back, we will talk about the recent major developments in VR, including Skyrim VR, and the fact that Doom VFR has smooth movement with the aim and DualShock 4. I'm going to mention that a lot. So, we will talk about the recent developments in VR, thanks to Black Friday and Skyrim, how that's turning out. as we round down our show. Thank you so much for listening. Here's Our New World by Dream Theater, featuring Lizzie Hale here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you for listening, and please stay. That was Side by Side by Ariana Grande featuring Nicki Minaj here on 89.5 FM KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. I'm your host, Jell, and welcome back to the final segment of GameBabble Live for this week. We will be back, of course, next week. But it is time for us to discuss VR. I'm sorry. VR has been a very weird topic in gaming, as I mentioned at the top of the show, because before the headsets came out, people wouldn't shut up about the thing. Then the headsets come out, and they're all like, oh, well, that was the thing. And I think a lot of that was because people thought that, number one, they thought the headsets would be cheaper, and number two, they thought they would work with every game. Because everyone wanted to play Skyrim in VR. In fact, I remember when the Oculus was in development, one of the demos that they showed for the Oculus was them hacking in VR support to Skyrim, like some rudimentary stuff. And that's what everyone wanted. Well, Skyrim VR is here, and it might maybe be a bit of a game changer. In fact, they have apparently sold more PlayStation VRs because of Skyrim. This past week than they have for the past 18 weeks before it combined. Like, we are seeing launch day level sales figures on the PlayStation VR. There is a sudden rush because, well, Skyrim. And it's funny because there's so many people who are making fun of the fact that Skyrim's been re-released on Switch and PlayStation VR once again. And they're, like, making fun of it and they're giving it crap. And then they're like, well, I'm going to buy it on Switch. And I'm like, but the VR one's the game changer. Because I'm going to tell you a little secret. I don't like Skyrim, but I like Skyrim VR. More accurately, I don't like the Elder Scrolls series. I felt the melee combat was severely lacking, and thus I couldn't get into them because I felt the melee combat was incredibly important. But Skyrim VR, thanks to the addition of Move controller support, even though it is rudimentary melee combat implementation, it's still good. It's still enough to get me more engaged. Because, of course, the way it worked in regular Skyrim was the way melee combat works in a first-person shooter. You point at someone, you click on them to swing your sword, and that's pretty much it. In Skyrim VR, though, you have your two Move controllers. You can play on a DualShock 4 as well, but I'm playing on the Move controllers just because of this, and you have complete one-to-one control over each of your hands. So you know how you attack an enemy? You take the hand with the sword in it, and you swing it at the enemy. Now, the way it works is when you swing above a certain speed, and it's a very low speed, your sword makes a whooshing noise. And if, while whooshing, your sword intersects with an enemy, it deals damage to them. Now, there's no aimed strikes, like you can't specifically hit the head and expect it to do more damage. It doesn't even really judge how hard you swing. Like, to do a strong attack, you hold the trigger and swing, because, of course, it was originally a button-based game. It wasn't made for VR, and the way strong swings work, they deplete a stamina meter, and they have different pros and cons to them, so you don't really want to do that. So, on the surface, it might be like, well, that doesn't sound much different from, the waggle control that's in the Switch release, except it absolutely is because of the change in targeting. Because now, instead of, putting the crosshairs on an enemy and clicking on them, you are physically moving your arm in such a way that you get your weapon to intersect with the enemy. And that matters more than that. If when you swing, you hit multiple enemies, you damage multiple enemies. And then the big change is that since you control both hands individually, you can actually swing like a mace at one enemy to your right and then shoot lightning out of the other hand to an enemy to your left. That's a big change. But, of course, you've probably seen the previews of Skyrim VR and thought that doesn't look very good because it used teleport movement. Teleport movement has been one of the major struggles of virtual reality. Because, you see, some people get very sick when they try to play a VR game where they can move around, like, freely. It's actually the inverse of motion sickness, because motion sickness is when you feel movement but you don't see it. In VR, you get this weird situation where you see movement, but you don't feel it. And so some people with motion sickness aren't affected by this. Some people who don't have motion sickness are affected by it. It is completely up in the air. But if you play enough VR games, like the nice stationary ones that you acclimate yourself to the VR environment, a lot of people have said, yeah, no, they can do smooth movement in games. So all the hardcore VR players that are really invested in this are really, really sick of teleport movement. Because, of course, if you're not a VR head and you're watching, you're watching this trailer of Skyrim and you're seeing them just jankily teleport across the countryside, it's like, yeah, that's not great. It really looks like the game is severely downgraded because of that, especially Skyrim, where you have this big, wide open world. Well, they did add in smooth movement with the Move controllers. It works great. It doesn't have smooth turning. That's still incremental. But they say they're going to patch in smooth turning in the next update. The way it works is in your offhand, so probably your left hand, you hold down the button on top of your Move controller, and then you tilt it in the direction you want to go. And this will let you move forwards, backwards, strafe left, strafe right. And then you press the X and circle buttons, which are at the bottom of your main hand controller. And that will let you incrementally turn left and right. It actually works out pretty well. Once you get used to it, you can be pretty maneuverable in combat. I'm having almost no issues with it. I'm very comfortable with it, and it'll be even better when they add in smooth turning, because Raw Data is using a very similar control scheme, and they just patched in smooth turning, and oh my god, I love it. I love it with the smooth turning. I don't even need analog sticks anymore. I am okay with just tilting my Move controller. It actually feels pretty alright, and I realized that was actually how the old VR setups worked, but the ones they had at Exhilarama, the virtuality ones back in the 90s, yeah, that was how movement worked on those, if I recall correctly. So that's all pretty interesting. I'm really liking Skyrim VR. I like it so much more than regular Skyrim. And a lot of people, I know the reviews are getting kind of mixed. It's kind of funny, because there's all these articles about how being able to play Skyrim on the go on the Switch is just such a completely game-changing experience, and then it's like, but the VR one literally changes the game, and you're kind of ignoring it. But here's the interesting thing. Skyrim VR is outselling Skyrim Switch. In fact, it sold out pretty quickly on Amazon. They have a bundle pack. That's selling out. It's, Skyrim VR is selling really well, and it makes perfect sense. People have wanted Skyrim VR since before VR. I remember when the Move motion controllers were released, a bunch of people were like, can we get a Skyrim game where we swing the controller around like a sword? And, we need this for Move. We need this for Move. And it never happened. And then VR, they reveal VR. And it's like, dude, they should do Skyrim in VR. And then, the PlayStation VR Reddit, every single day there was a new topic about how we needed Skyrim in VR, how cool that would be. And then they announced Skyrim VR and everyone panics because of the controls, but they're still going to buy it. And that's the thing. Because Skyrim VR is a thing so many people wanted so deeply that it didn't matter if it got complete garbage review scores. There were people out there who were just going to buy it regardless. And now they're being blown away. Again, the PlayStation VR Reddit is probably the best source of PlayStation VR news, since so much of the gaming media is ignoring VR, especially the PlayStation VR. And let me tell you, ever since the release of Skyrim VR, there have been just a deluge of people being like, I just got my PlayStation VR, this is amazing, I'm loving it. It's like, oh, this is good. Now, I should mention there were a lot of Black Friday deals on it, so that helped a lot as well. And I would still curb my enthusiasm a little bit, unless you really love Skyrim. Because the PlayStation VR is still an expensive piece of hardware, okay? And I don't want to be responsible. I want to be held responsible for how you spend your money, okay? I love the thing, but I am also someone who loves to get in on new technology at the ground level. I love the PlayStation Move, for crying out loud. So, yeah, of course I'm loving my PlayStation VR and Skyrim VR, but it is still building up a game library. Yes, there's 100 out there, but a lot of them, they're cheap downloads and they're really cool for what they are. The ones that are actually like, and the major thing is that, there's not a lot of AAA games. That's an important thing to note. There aren't a lot of AAA games on VR because there aren't enough people who have VR headsets, and it's going to take a lot of work to make a VR game. But I did notice one thing interesting. See, with VR, you kind of need to downgrade the graphics. Many people have noticed the graphical downgrade. Indeed, Skyrim VR might actually be the worst-looking rendition of Skyrim, which is really saying something. But that's because a VR game must run at a solid 60 FPS to even be allowed to be released on PlayStation VR. And it has to display 2 images simultaneously, one for each eye. That is a massive load on the system. And thus, think about the sheer number of AAA games that come out that don't even do 60 FPS outside of VR. Exactly. So it takes a lot of work. But here's the interesting thing. Skyrim VR and Skyrim on Switch launched the same day. Doom on Switch and the upcoming Doom VFR, there's 2 weeks difference between those two? I think the Switch and virtual reality are going to be best friends. Because the Switch is a significantly less powerful... the Switch is a significantly less powerful system, but it's portable, and that's super cool. Developers have been hesitant about releasing Switch games because, they have to downgrade the graphics so much. It takes so much work to optimize it for Switch. Again, what happened with Yooka-Laylee. But that's the same reason why they're not doing it for VR, and the Switch is selling really well. People are loving the Switch, and I can't blame them. I've mentioned before, it is my dream console. Having something that is simultaneously a portable and a console is great. And I know some people have argued, you could just get, a gaming laptop. No. Number one, the Switch is definitely cheaper than a decent gaming laptop. And number two, it works better as a portable. It's smaller, and it has a better battery life. People haven't really talked about that, haven't really revisited it, but I've been playing a lot of Nintendo Switch because of Sonic Forces, actually on the go, and the battery life actually seems pretty good on the Switch. Certainly better than the Wii U gamepad or the vanilla DSi before the XL. Those were the 2 times Nintendo really screwed up on batteries. So it actually seems like a functional portable. I think the Wii U gamepad and how bad the battery life on that is part of the reason why people are expecting the Switch to not have a good battery life, but not. Seems pretty alright. Seems like it might be a good portable system. And so that's really starting to drive sales there. Now people are scrambling to figure out what games they can actually get released on the Switch, what they can actually optimize to that significantly less powerful system. And while they're doing that, basically what I'm saying is if you can get it to run on Switch, you can get it to run on PlayStation VR. And it's so ironic that we're now reaching a point where people are going to have to hold themselves back and maybe downgrade their graphics a little right after we release the PlayStation 4 Pro and Xbox One X. But I think this is a good thing, because we've reached a point where graphics are already incredible if people can just optimize them. That's the thing. A lot of it is just about optimization. Because, you can get some amazing-looking PlayStation VR games, even on a regular PS4. You just gotta optimize. And I think that the increase in system power is allowing some developers to get kind of lazy and release these unoptimized games because they have all this room to be bloated. And I think, I think the Switch and the PlayStation VR may wind up reeling that in a little bit because they are proving to be very interesting. But I actually had more to talk about. I didn't get to talk about Monster of the Deep, which is if you have a regular PS4, not a Pro, I will tell you, Final Fantasy 15 Monster of the Deep is the blurriest VR game I've ever played. It does not look particularly great on a regular PS4. It's probably one of the few games where I'm like, yeah, I probably should have played this on a Pro. But I'm still enjoying it. It's a pretty solid fishing game, and the idea of deep story-based fishing mixed with Final Fantasy is kind of delightful. We'll talk about that more, hopefully next week. Oh, you didn't even touch on Rec Room. But there's one thing I can touch on, and that's the fact that Doom VFR has smooth movement. That is important for me to mention. Because, of course, the idea was, hey, let's port Doom to VR. And Doom is a game all about constantly moving and shooting. And no doubt Bethesda was like, well, you need to have teleport movement because otherwise people are going to get sick. And the developers were like, but we can't do that. Doom is all about moving. We would have to completely retool the game. And so Doom VFR is actually an entirely new Doom game, just recycling the assets, because it was completely rebuilt to be good for teleport movement. And because of that, it's actually a shorter game, but it's also a cheaper game. It's like half price compared to regular. But yeah, like they've had to, they had to completely rebuild this game, build a whole new Doom game just to make it work with teleport movement. And every single time the game is previewed, people complain about the teleport movement, especially after they added in aim support for the PlayStation aim controller. It's like you put in aim support, but we can't have smooth movement. So at the last possible minute, they have patched in smooth movement. It is not in any of the trailers. It is not advertised. Even the new preview video that IGN put out of playing classic Doom stages in VR still uses the teleport movement, and there's a bunch of VR heads popping up in the comments to tell everyone complaining, no, there's smooth movement in this game. IGN's just haven't figured out how to turn it on. Which, for the record, it's under options listed as left stick movement. You have to turn on the left stick movement to get your smooth movement. That's what that is. So it might not work with the Move controllers, but it does work with the aim and the DualShock 4. There's videos of it online. Lots of people have reported it because some people got early copies of the game. Look up some PlayStation 4 streams of Doom VFR, like on YouTube, and you will see them turning on the smooth movement and using it. Mind you, I don't think there's smooth turning. Once again, a lot like Skyrim there, but there is smooth movement. And I know that, and that's kind of a big deal. Then again, once the game comes out and everyone starts seeing streams of it, they will realize, oh, wait, there's smooth movement. And that's going to be the game changer. Anyway, so that's what's going on there. EGAD, I need to get going. So thank you so much for joining us for GameBabble Live here on 89.5 FM, KCFV The Wave, diverse music for your diverse mind. We will be back next week from 1 to 3 p.m. with even more video game news and information as more of it develops. Until then, though, thank you so much for joining me. Now, please enjoy Thunder by Imagine Dragons here on 89.5 FM, KCFV The Wave. Diverse music for your diverse mind. Thank you for listening. See